As we approach the Christmas and New Year period, it's essential that Jacinta Allen as Premier sit down with the Police Association and sort out this industrial dispute with our hard-working police officers. They work very hard, they deserve the respect of the Allen Labor government, and we're coming into a season where issues like road safety and community safety are more alive than normally in the year. And so it's really important, in fact it's urgent, that Jacinta Allen sit down with the Police Association and police force members and just sort out this industrial dispute. They do work hard and they deserve that respect. We don't want Victorian communities, whether it's in our tourist locations, but right across our state, suffering because of this ongoing dispute. So I call on the government to understand the seriousness and urgency of this industrial dispute and just sort it out. If I were Premier today, one, we wouldn't have this dispute, but if I were confronted with it, I would sit down with the Police Association and their representatives and sort the problem out. I'll come to those for a second. I like your style, you're hungry, that's good. Just a couple other things I'll talk about. The Commonwealth Government's mid-year update is concerning for a number of reasons. Obviously, Victoria is missing out. Victoria should be receiving more from the federal government. And we will always, as an opposition and in government, fight for Victoria to receive the biggest possible share that it can of federal funding, whether it's for infrastructure or health. But we have to accept the reason Victoria isn't getting more than it should be, it seems, is because of total mismanagement of major projects, in particular by Jacinta Allen and Tim Pallas and their colleagues in the Labor government. Clearly, given that in terms of priority infrastructure projects, Victoria's only getting $101.8 million of $11 billion over the coming years, says a lot about how badly our infrastructure program has been mismanaged by Jacinta Allen as the minister in charge of these projects. And who's paying the price of this? Victorians are paying the price. Victoria wouldn't be in this position if Jacinta Allen and Tim Pallas and their colleagues hadn't messed up so many projects. And now it seems even the federal government is concerned about the state of infrastructure projects in Victoria and whether they stack up, whether the cost overruns can be met and addressed. They have concerns, and even they are now walking away from their commitments to Victoria. Again, Victoria should be receiving more. We deserve to receive our fair share of infrastructure funding, but we're not because of mismanagement by the Labor government. I will also say this, it's not clear from the mid-year update what the federal government's position on the suburban rail loop is. These are statements that the federal government has made over the forward estimates period. So we now know that at least until 26-27, there's only $101.8 million for priority infrastructure projects in Victoria. That seems to suggest that the Commonwealth is not going to put any more money into suburban rail loop than it already has, at least for that period. And that is a concern because Jacinta Allen this week has proceeded in clearly a financially reckless manner to sign up to the suburban rail loop. I'll just let that car go past, that vehicle go past. He's got to work, it's got to work. It's clear that with the federal government not making any further commitments for priority infrastructure projects in Victoria over the forward estimates, right up to 26-27, that it's not clear now what its position on the suburban rail loop is. In the week where Jacinta Allen has signed Victorians up to a massive debt-funded project in circumstances where even she can't say how it's going to be funded or whether it will ever even be finished. And the Commonwealth Government has effectively walked away at least until financial 26-27. That leaves Victorians in a very precarious position where we've all been signed up to these massive contracts and this massive project when we don't know how Jacinta Allen is going to fund it. What we do know is that just about every major project under Premier Jacinta Allen has blown out or been delayed. From Melbourne Metro to Westgate Tunnel, we're now going to see it with the suburban rail loop. We know what happened with the debacle surrounding the Commonwealth Games. And there's every reason to be concerned that with suburban rail loop, we will see the same kind of fiasco around this major project, signing us up as a state to a project when we don't even know how we're going to fund it. Our principal funder, the Commonwealth Government, is not giving any more money at this stage than what it's already committed, and that is of great concern. Final point I just want to address today with the work cover inquiry here in the Parliament. This work cover inquiry is really important, and it vindicates the concerns that we in the Coalition, the Liberals and Nationals, had about the government's flawed work cover bill. It's clear, even on the evidence that VECI Chief Executive Paul Guerra has given today, that this is a dead cat of a bill and that it doesn't address return to work. Now, Paul is now echoing the concerns we were echoing last month about the government's flawed work cover bill, and it just shows how important it was for us as an opposition to do something constructive in establishing this inquiry so it can undertake important work. The evidence that it will gather will help improve this flawed bill to make sure that when a new bill comes before the Parliament early in the new year, it can address our principal concerns and the concerns of the business community around return to work, around injury prevention, and greater transparency and scrutiny around the operation of our work cover scheme. I'll hand over to Brad.
Thanks very much, JP. Good afternoon, everyone. Just two things to address today. Firstly, on the MyEFO matter. Well, frankly, what the MyEFO indeed? There is a circumstance here in Victoria where the state Labor government is relying upon the feds to bail them out. If you ever needed a clearer sign that Victoria was broke and that we can't afford what we've been signed up for, here it is. In the words of the State's Treasurer. The last 9 years he's been the State's Treasurer, and this is what has been served up to Victorians. It's also a clear sign that the feds just don't have trust, they don't have confidence in the state government here in Victoria to deliver upon things. If they did, Victoria would have received their fair share. But they don't have trust in the way that the Victorian government manages things or mismanages things. That, of course, has been their history over the last 9 years, more than $30 billion wasted on major projects alone in this state. And so by one measure, no one should be surprised that the feds haven't dished up our fair share to Victoria. The second thing I just wanted to cover off this morning, or this afternoon, as we're edging closer towards it, is the ABS unemployment figures. Unemployment today in Victoria is at 4%. It's risen by 0.2% in the last month. And let's move away from statistics just for a moment. Let's talk about the real impact on Victorians and Victorians' lives just days before Christmas. That totals some 4,781 of our Victorians who are no longer in work because of the financial mismanagement of this government and decisions that they have made. Just a stone's throw from Christmas, just a few days from Christmas, where families want to get together around their Christmas table and do the very best they can, pay their bills and meet their bills. They are now no longer in a job, and we've clearly got to be doing better than that.
Any questions for Brad or I? Yeah, sure. That's okay.
Would you give police a 4% pay rise if you were president?
Well, I would sit down with them. Obviously, police officers deserve fair and reasonable wage increases. They work really hard. They put themselves in harm's way. I'm not here today to say what that number should be. What I can say with certainty is that the only way you'll get an outcome is if the Premier actually shows some respect for our police officers and sits down with them. They have genuine concerns. As for the number, that should be worked through by way of negotiations. But if you don't have negotiations, if you have repeated meetings of about 7 minutes because you can't get anywhere, you're not going to get any kind of progress around a settlement. And we're entering the Christmas and New Year period where we need our police force out there feeling like they have the backing of the Victorian government. So I just think Jacinta Allen needs to sit down with them and sort it out.
Do you feel concerned about how it will affect road policing this Christmas? It's always a really, really busy time.
Yeah. What I will say is that my colleagues and I in the Liberals and Nationals sympathise greatly with Victoria's police officers, and we do believe they deserve fair and reasonable wage increases. But I do hope that they might defer or cancel altogether any form of industrial action, because they ought to know that we and the Victorian community are right behind them. It's just the Victorian government that needs to sit down with them and sort it out. I don't want Victorians to suffer. And I hope and trust that the Police Association might take some time to think about maybe deferring any industrial action like that. I know they don't want to and never will agree to anything that would compromise safety, but any form of industrial action could distract. And so I hope that they'll do the great job they've been doing, and that Jacinta Allen will come to the party, sit down and sort it out.
Defer for the Christmas period, do you mean?
Well, defer to allow negotiations to continue, and certainly through the Christmas and New Year period. But even beyond, so long as the government starts showing good faith, I can understand why police officers who've been rebuffed feel like they need to do this. But I hope they also understand there's tremendous support, not just in the opposition, but right across the Victorian community, and that we just all need to work together to convince Jacinta Allen and her government to sit down and sort the issue out with the Police Association.
Have you conveyed that to the association? Have you had any contact with them?
Through my shadow ministers who are in regular contact with the association. I talk to Wayne Gatt quite often. I haven't spoken to him in recent weeks, but I know my shadows do, and they know our feelings of support for them.
Reports of bad behaviour out of Crown Casino today. Do they deserve to hold a licence in the state?
Well, I was concerned to read the reports today about Crown Casino, and what I would say is I don't want to provide a commentary on matters that need to be investigated. I understand that Crown and other authorities will look into the matter, and that's appropriate. What seems to have been reported, what has been reported to be fair, would on its face constitute serious conduct, and we would want that investigated. But I do want to allow that process and a process of fairness to operate around that investigation.
Just one more on police. The minister's press conference was interrupted by a neighbour this morning who was angry at just saying that, police deserve to be paid better. What does it say that the community is now feeling compelled to speak out?
The Victorian community is speaking out on this because they're feeling it too. Our police force has been nickel and dimed by the Allen Labor government. We need more resources. They're suffering from fatigue. They're all working really hard. They deserve a fair and decent wage increase, and one that's reasonable in all the circumstances. And they're feeling it because Victorian police officers are working as hard as they can, but we know resources are being stretched because the Allen Labor government is shortchanging Victoria Police. So in terms of road safety, in terms of community safety more broadly, particularly in parts of our state where crime numbers in certain categories of property-related offences and even personal injury offences are on the rise, Victorians are feeling that. Victorians want the Allen Labor government to come to the party and start supporting police officers and also supporting Victoria Police more generally through better resourcing, because we all pay the price as Victorians if we don't have enough police, whether it's property-related offences or injury-related offences. We all feel that. So Jacinta Allen, I hope, will get the message today that this is more serious than she might appreciate. Sit down with the police force and sort it out.
Did the government get the wages policy wrong at 3%? It's now facing industrial action on multiple fronts because it won't budge on that 3% figure. Is that a sign it got it wrong?
Well, I think the government has lost control of wage negotiations across its workforce, and I think it has only itself to blame. It's ignored our frontline officers, and now they're feeling the frustration. They're overworked and under-resourced. They're all working harder because the government is giving them less to work with, and Victorians are paying the price for the government's bad management. So the government needs to understand that unless it's going to take these negotiations seriously and get involved to sort them out, we're going to continue to see disruptions right across Victoria.
Do you think 3% is a fair figure though?
Yeah, look, I'm not in a position to know what figures unless you're given all the financials around the operating costs of the service. But what I will say is that we certainly believe that Victoria police officers deserve a fair and reasonable pay increase. They work really hard, and we all as Victorians rely on them. They put themselves in harm's way for all of us. And so there should be an increase. As for the number, well, I think when you've got access to all of the information, I think you can comment more broadly on wage figures. But my message to the government is sit down and sort it out.
Would the government have been able to afford a decent pay rise if it had managed its finances better in other sectors?
This is the problem we all come back to, right? Because of mismanagement, principally of major projects, but of waste and mismanagement, the corruption we've seen over the last 9 years, Victoria is broke, and the Victorian budget is without the resources now to support our frontline workers, whether it's police officers, nurses and teachers. We're all now paying the price. Those who work on the front line are being overstretched because of resources not being supported by the government. In the community, we feel that because we're not getting the services we deserve, and it's all because of waste and mismanagement. And these aren't small amounts that go down the drain when it comes to waste and mismanagement. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars. And that's according to the Auditor General and other experts. So this financial management under Jacinta Allen and her predecessor are not only leading to blowouts on major projects in particular, but it now means that all other areas of government, health, police, education, child protection, they're all being starved of funds, and we're all paying the price. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.